Okay, for today, we need to make sure that you're good at finding points on graphs. If I was going to just say one thing that you have to know for this test that you're taking tomorrow, it's you need to be able to handle it no matter what the weird situation is. What if they say y equals negative x and you have to find 3 points? Would everybody just start with find 3 points on that graph? And a lot of people think, so your points are all going to be negative. No, they're not. You get to pick whatever you want to put in. And if you put in a number, some people think, well, they're all going to be negative for the x's. No, you can put in like -1 and it goes inside that imaginary parenthesis there and you'll end up getting a positive. All right, so I'd like you to put in -1, even if you hadn't yet. And then any other numbers you want. Hallie, give me an example of some numbers that you put in. Did you put in -1? And what'd you get? -1 is y equals 1. Okay, and then what else did you put in?
0, 1, 2.
Okay, if you put in 0, if you put in 1, -1, because the 1 goes here, and there's already a negative in the problem, so it comes out -1. All right, I think you get the idea there. And then I know you can all graph, so from there, you just have to graph these points. So let's actually make sure everybody graph these points, and we'll make sure it all makes sense. The original problem was y equals -x. So here's y equals regular x. It's just a line that goes like that. Why is this one different than that? Because the negative. So the negative means that it'll have a slope of -1. So instead of the blue line, it's like the green line that goes like that. And if you actually graph the points -1, 1, it's right there. 0, 0, right there. 1, -1, right there. Okay. Now I want you to adjust this graph if I said it was part of a piecewise graph and it was only this green line, but only when x was between -1 and 1. And I'm going to put or equal on the one end and not on the other. How would you adjust your graph now? Row 3 and last person. Lux, that's you. How would you adjust the graph? You got to erase some of it.
Yeah, so you'd erase everything before -1 and everything after -1.
And then there, you are correct. And now what's that or equal thing?
That means that you use a full point because it owns that section.
Excellent. So in this area, we're going to use the darkened in point. So I'm going to make sure this is really clear. That right there, there has to be a filled in dot. And the other end, Lux?
You'd use an empty point because it's just less than.
Yes, that's an empty point. So it does not own -1. And so if I was making the chart, I would have gone like this and I would have said not. You still should use that point. See, it's an empty point. But it needs to be an empty point, not a filled in point. All right, here's another one that stumped a lot of people on today's practice problems. There was a problem like this. And then kids were like, understandably, but when I put in a number, it's going to automatically not work. No, depends on what number you pick. can you, even if you didn't have this plus 1, you could still make it work, couldn't you? Everybody find me 3 points on this graph. Because remember, you're dropping it inside that x. There's a little parenthesis there, so if you use x's that are negative, you'll be fine. Or even 0 works pretty good. I'm putting -2 just to make a point, like to show you something. All right, so if I put in 0 to start with here, put 0 here, square root of 0 is 0, because so 0, 0 is a point. And then I put in -1, and that goes right there. And then I have a negative of the negative, makes it +1, and the square root of 1 is 1. And then I get to the 2. And the problem is not that it's negative, because there's 2 negatives. So when you put in this -2 right here, the problem is that the square root of 2 is not something you know how to graph. Now, could you legally say that that's like 1 point something? Yeah, I'd actually be okay with that. If you said the answer's like 1.3-ish, I'd have been okay if you'd have put a dot there on the graph. It just can't count towards your official points. What do I mean by that? I mean, you're estimating. You're saying it's about there. You got to get a real one. Like, who figured out another number we could put in here? -4. That works out perfect. Not a decimal. Perfect. So if I put -4 in right there, I have the square root of +4, because you start in here and you get +4. Square root of 4 is 2. So that is a real point. That's an estimate. Yes?
Are we not adding the 1 anymore?
Are we not adding what?
Like the 1?
No, I changed the problem because some people would think, oh, because we're adding 1, all of them will work. The point of this was you can have a graph that has a -x under it, and it's not like it's impossible to do. You just have to pick x's that are negative. All right, and then the last kind of graph, of course, is piecewise. What if it's x squared when x is less than 1? What if it's y equals 5? That always freaks people out. That just means on the whole chart, y is 5, y is 5, y is 5, y is 5. No matter what you put in, y is 5. But still, we should practice it. And that'll be between 1 and 3. And then it'll be square root of x minus 3. And again, people are like, well, I put in numbers, you gotta get square roots of negatives. Then put in different numbers. All right, that is the hardest kind, and there is multiple piecewise functions on this test. So you can't just go, well, the only kind I don't get is piecewise. Well, then you're about to fail this test. You gotta be able to do this 1 point at a time. Make an XY chart for that. Make an XY chart for that. And make a XY chart for the third part. I'll pause for a second while you give this one a try. Okay, so I'm going to pick some points for this. There's really only certain points that I can pick. It has to be less than 1. But, hear me now, you have to start with 1. Because even though it says less than 1, this is a point. It's just an empty point. I say not. If you wanted to say empty instead of circling it and saying not, that'd be fine. But I have to put in 1 because this has a 1 there. So I'm going to put a 1 in, and I get a 1 squared is y equals 1. 1, 1, but not. That means I put an empty circle at 1, 1. All right, now it's less than 1, so I'm going to put 0 and -1 and -2, and it looks like it's just going to keep going like that. So then if I put in 0, 0 squared is 0, -1 squared is 1, and -2 squared is 4. If you messed up the negative on that, Remember, it was inside of some parenthesis and getting squared. So, all right. So now, 0, 0, negative 1, 1, negative 2, 4. Look at that. It looks like part of a parabola. Now it's got this y equals 5 going on. That's a straight line across at y is 5. If I put in x is 1, you get 5. If put in 2, you get 5. Put in 3, you get 5. So 5, 5, 5. Straight line. It owns both ends because they say or equal. Then I go to this function. And now it says I should put in 3. But remember, it does not own that spot. But you need an empty circle starting with 3. So I put the 3 here, and I got square root of 0. Well, that worked out nice. It was 0. So 3, 0 over 3 up 0. But it doesn't own that spot. Make it really clear that that's an empty circle. And now I'm going to go put in 4. These are things bigger than 3, right? So I'm going to put in 4. And 4 minus 3 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. 5 is kind of like an object lesson. If I put in 5, you'll go, okay, then it's a square root of 2, but you don't know what the square root of 2 is. If you wanted to say it's like 1.2-ish, that's an estimate. I'm okay with estimates, but they wouldn't count towards exact points. So the next number I can actually put in is 6, 7. Because when I put in 7, I got square root of 7 minus 3 is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. So 7, 2 is the first, like, normal square root that works out nice. They're called perfect squares. So I'm going to graph these now. 3, 0 is a knot, so that's this spot. 4, 1, 5, comma 1.2. All right, that's weird. 7, 2. Okay, dots are all lining up. Looks like that. It looks like it's just a square root that's been moved over 3. Look at that. Square root that's been moved over 3. Question?
Yeah, for the y equals 5, should we add arrows on that line, or do you not care?
Matters. Does it go forever?
Okay.
No. It stops at 3 and 1. So nope, it should be black dots. Just a solid dot there and a solid dot there. If you're ever going to have an arrow, it has to go forever that way. So it's only going to be on the ends where that would happen. All right. I know that's not easy, but that is typical Precalc. It's just like a normal Precalc test. So if this is too hard for you, you do have to start thinking about that. I do have more than one student who has decided that this class is too hard and they want to move to FST. And I won't fight you if you say I have good reason, but all I would ask is that you make sure your basics are good first, like try hard getting your basics down. Because if you get those, then this class isn't that hard. But if you haven't got your basics under you, this class will be really hard. All right, so on that note, we are going to look at the first 20 again. So everybody open up in Schoology. There is a Schoology quiz there. It's homework. And we're doing another first 20. They're basic algebra topics. But you can ask me for a few minutes of help right now. I will, in front of everybody, help with any of those first 20 topics. So if you need a quick reminder, like what the heck is prime factorization? All right, so everybody right now open it up and get in the quiz. And it's resumable, so you can go look through all 20 questions. If there's any in there that you're like, yeah, I don't know how to do this kind, ask me. And I'll do a good 10 minutes worth of help. And then we'll have the rest of the hour, it'll just be work time, where you can work on this basics, which, remember, is this due tomorrow? No. This is due the next day. So the most important thing is studying for your test, but all these basics are in your test. Any of them can be in there at any moment. Like right in the middle of the test, one of these problems can appear. You have to know these basics. So, I'd like you to just in a second show me that you're in the Schoology quiz, because I think some of you still don't get that's where you're supposed to be right now. Open the Schoology quiz. And then please turn it my way so that I can see you have opened the Schoology quiz. All right. Go on this side of the room. I'll get over there in just a second. Schoology quiz. All right, thank you.
That's what it was, speak slow.
Okay, I'll check on you in a second. All right, good. All right, good. Now flip through it, and if there's any, I want to spend like 9 minutes now answering any questions. So if you're like, I don't get this kind, just ask. I'll explain it quick. Yes, which kind? Everybody's problem number 2 is about the same thing, just so you know. So like if she says she wants to know help with number 2, your number 2 is the same. It's just everybody's problems are a little different. They draw from a question bank. Okay, so which problem number?
Number 12.
Number 12. Please, everybody scroll to number 12. Now, your problem numbers will be different than everybody else's. Just read me your problem numbers, Sally. Number 12.
Plus or minus 6, square root 5 over 6.
All right. I'm going to do one like that because your question is to do this one, but I'll do one just like it. 5 plus and minus 5 square roots of 3 all over 15. That's pretty much the same type of question. So everybody, this is the part where I know it's hard because you're going to be like, well, I want to work on my quiz. I got to make sure you understand this one first. So look up, watch this, okay? Do you get the top has a 5 in it? Now, some people think you can just cancel that 5 with that 15. You cannot. It does not work. But what you can do is factor the 5 out. And then when I divide this by 5 and this by 5, I get 1 plus and minus root 3 all over 15. And then you have to be smart enough to go, oh, the 15 is really 5 times 3. And that's the moment when these 5s can be canceled. Does that give you the idea what to do? All right. What? That's it. So your answer would be 1 plus and minus root 3 all over 3. I'm not saying that's not the question she asked me, but it's just like the question she asked me. So, all right. Is there any other of these topics that you're a little shaky on? I know I've seen the scores. Okay, so I know there's a lot of people that got like 10 wrong, and I know some was just dumb mistakes, but ask me more. And Hallie's one of my best students, so yes.
Number 11.
Read number 11 to me.
Parentheses 5a to the power of 4b to the power of 3 in parentheses to the squared times b to the power of 4.
All right, good. So, again, I'm going to make up one just like it. I'm just going to change a couple numbers. I'm going to change that to a 3, and that to a 2, and then it'll be the same kind of question. All right, so that you can practice by doing the other one. The number one mistake people make here is they forget to square the 3. You know, the 3 has to get squared also. So 3 squared right off the bat is 9. And then there's the choice between this kind, which is a squared squared, versus a to the 3rd times a to the 5th, like that kind. On this kind, you add the powers, a to the 8th. On this kind, you multiply the powers, a to the 4th. And let me explain why. Isn't a squared really like a times a? And then you square it. That's why there's 4 of them. Because squaring it means times it by itself. This kind really means a times a, and that's why it's a to the 8th. If you write out what they really mean, you know, break them up into what I call exploded view, then it's really easy to tell. So Turf, can you tell me from what I just said, that part should be a to the what?
4.
Correct. And the next would be b to the,
5th.
nope,
Oh,
this kind you multiply. So it was b to the 3rd squared. Jimmy, just explain why. Because if that was b to the 3rd, it's b. Squared means times itself. And if you look at that, you'd never think it was to the 5th. b times b is b to the 6th. And then there's a b to the 4th next to it. The other kind you multiply, this kind you add. Final answer, 9a to the 4th, b to the 10th. Glad you asked. Powers are in this class all the time. There's powers on your test that you're about to take. So on this kind, you add them. On this kind, where it's a power to a power, you multiply them. All right, that was a good question. As you look through your basic 20, is there any other topics you'd like to nominate for a little discussion? Yes? Please read me number 8.
8x to the 5th over 24x.
All right. So remember my favorite saying, if you can factor it, you should. And so I'm going to factor the 8 and the 24 like this. 8 is 8 times 1, and 24 is 8 times 3. Now I'm going to take my x, and it's x to the 5th. I know this is a little bit dumb, but I'm going to just multiply that all the way out. It's a whole bunch of x's. And then this one is 9 of them. Do you get what I just did there? I just factored it all. And now I guarantee you, you'll know what to cancel. Tell me something I should cancel. All of them?
No.
How many of them?
5.
Exactly. And then you can see how many are left. See what I mean? Now, in the real world, kids get used to this and they're like, oh, so there's just x to the 4th on the bottom. You don't have to draw it all the way out, but while you're learning it, it's a great way to do it. And then what else cancels? Yep. So then your answer on this one would have been 1 over 3x to the 4th. Okay. Thanks for asking. All right. I don't want to make you ask me anymore in front of the group because I think I've done enough practice in front of the group, but your job is to finish this thing, but what's the top priority? This basics thing or the review worksheet from Friday? Review worksheet from Friday because that's what the test is on, piecewise. I wanted to get you started on this because these little basics are in the middle of your problems on the test. Like there's an x squared on your test, there's an x to the 3rd on your test. There's all of this little stuff is in there because it's algebra and it's all over the place in Precalc. But if I had only one thing you could do for the rest of the hour, if you only had X amount of attention, probably focus on getting that Friday practice problems done. And then I'm going to post a key. I haven't yet, but I will. I promise. I'll get a key posted. But I can't promise you that until the day is done today. So like during class, just work on it. If you want me to check one, you can walk up and say, am I doing this right? I would be happy to do that for you. All right, and that's all I have for you for the video for today.